Two children appear out of nowhere in 12th century England. They spoke an unknown language, they claimed to come from a place with no sun, and they only ate beans. And their skin was green. Sound like some sort of sci-fi show? Think again. Hi there, my name's Kelly, and this is Eerie Eats, where creepy stories and cozy recipes come together like folklore and food trucks. Today, we're going to make this yummy dish. So let's dive into the strange, centuries-old tale of two green children and a mystery that still defies explanation. Okay, so we're going to need lemon zest, Parma ham, which is prosciutto, gnocchi, olive oil, clove of garlic, butter, fresh sage, double potted, blanched broad beans, also known as fava beans. But do you know how hard it was to find fava beans where I'm at? I couldn't. So we're going to be using lima beans instead, so just pretend they're fava beans, okay? So let's get into the weirdness. Between the years of 1135 and 1154, in the village of Woolpit, Suffolk, England, two children emerged from nowhere, it seemed. Siblings, a boy and a girl. And their clothes were like no other fabric, that the villagers had seen, and they spoke a language that was unknown to the people. The thing that was most surprising was that the kids' skin was green. The villagers, seeing that the children were frightened and disoriented, they brought them to a local landowner, a knight named Sir Richard de Calne. They were given food and shelter, and initially the children refused all the food that they were offered, in spite them obviously being hungry. So after a few days, they found some broad beans in the garden of Richard's and eagerly started to eat them up. The broad beans were the only source of nutrition for months, and gradually, the children started trying new foods. As they did, their skin returned to a normal color. The children were baptized, but shortly after, unfortunately, the boy got sick and passed away. The girl, however, lived, eventually learned English, and then told a rather peculiar story. The children were tending to their father's herd when they heard the sound like a tone of bells. They felt a bizarre sensation, and then they found themselves in Woolpit, where the villagers found them. The girl told of a land where the sun never shone, and she describes it as having perpetual twilight. Everything was green, even the people. The land was called St. Martin's Land. The villagers had never heard of this land, and she could not recall exactly where it was situated. She did, however, recall that there was a bright area of land that was visible from St. Martin's, but it was separated by a great river. And the girl was given the name Agnes. She grew up healthy and eventually married and had children of her own. But this was only one account of the story. And that was the earliest account, and that story was written by William of Newburgh, the 12th century England historian and Augustinian canon, which is basically a Catholic priest who lives under the community of religious rule. And he wrote the Historia Rerum Anglicanum, which basically, in Latin, that means History of English Affairs. That was written between 1196 and 1198. The second account was from Ralph of Cogshell, Chronum Anglicanum, which is a long time English work. I think that's my interpretation of it. And that was written between 1189 and 1220. Although the two accounts agree on the core of the story, there were a few differences. The differences suggest that the stories were written independently. No eyewitness accounts and based on third or even fourth party sources. The discovery of the children differs. In William's version, the children just appear near the wolf pits, whereas in Ralph's version, they emerge from a cave. William's version notes that the children were herding their father's cattle, and they heard the bells and then felt a strange feeling. In Ralph's version, he emphasizes that the children had a journey through a cave guided by the sound. In William's version, the girl grew up healthy and married a man from King's Lynn. In Ralph's version, he mentioned that she was the servant for the knight, Richard de Calne's household. Let's get into the weird stuff, because let's be honest, basically that's what we're here for, and the story is already strange. One of the oldest ideas was fairies. Back in the 12th century, it wasn't uncommon for the folks to believe in the fae, magical beings that lived in hidden realms parallel to our own. The children's green hue, the strange language, and their sudden appearance all checked the boxes for fairy lore. Some even speculated that they wandered out of a fairy ring or they were banished from the underworld. Others believed that the children weren't from this world at all, but from another planet. UFOs and alien theorists think that the siblings could have come through a wormhole or a portal. That would explain their green skin, unfamiliar language, and the way they describe their home as dark and twilight-filled. Some even claim that the bells that they heard could have been technology or sound transmissions. Then there was the theory that they were time travelers or slipped in from a parallel dimension, a glitch in the matrix, if you will. The idea is that they came from alternate Earth, just layer beside ours, where the rules of light and life were a little bit different. Wild, right? But let's take a step back. Some historians believe that the children might have been Flemish orphans. During that time, there was a political unrest in the nearby region of Fornham. It's been suggested that the children came from a Flemish settlement that was attacked, leaving them to wander through the forest and perhaps even caves, eventually emerging near Woolpit. And that could explain the unfamiliar clothes, their foreign language, and maybe even their green skin. Speaking of which, the green color, some doctors and historians have suggested that the children may have suffered from chlorosis, often known as green sickness, a type of severe iron deficiency anemia linked to malnutrition. And since they reportedly ate nothing but broad beans at first, which are naturally rich in iron, it's possible that their diet slowly corrected the deficiency. And that could explain why the girl's skin eventually returned to normal, just as the story describes. And what about St. Martin's Land? To some believers, that's a misinterpretation or symbolic reference. Others have suggested it might have been a real nearby village, misheard, misunderstood, possibly linked to this church of St. Martin, common in the area. It's worth noting that Fornham St. Martin isn't far from Woolpit, and it's just plausible enough to raise eyebrows. There are no surviving official records of the woman named Agnes marrying a man from King's Lynn, or any clear documentation tying her to Richard de Calne either. She simply fades from history, leaving behind a story that feels both impossible and yet oddly real. So, what was the truth behind the Green Children? Fairies? Aliens? Time travelers from another realm? Or maybe just confused, sick children wandering from a nearby village? So that's all I've got for you today. Thank you for hanging out with me in my kitchen of creepiness. If you like this video and would like to see more, hit that like and subscribe button so you know the next time that I upload. Also, in the comments below, if you want me to do a story, just let me know down below which story that is. And I'm going to try this fried gnocchi. I'm going to get a little bit of everything here. Definitely different, but it's not bad. Bon appetit.